If you're just tuning in, we like to do what we like to do is we like to do a little recap of the episode before we actually like jump in the episode, especially when an episode is as long as this one was. So if you're checking out just our recap, sometimes this is a separate video that we peel out and put as its own thing. And then we jump into the discussion on the episode, what we thought about it, our kind of favorite theories and what have you. So again, if you're checking out just that recap video, we will in the description have a link to the full episode discussion. So you can check that out as well. But yeah, episode 61. This was such an amazing episode. The majority of it is going to be combat. What we typically do in combat sections is we highlight just the high points. This combat went so long that it actually went past the break, and there's a lot of really cool details to point out. So what I'll try to do is point out how things happened, but I'm also going just to mention some really cool moments. First of all, we know that our man Bordor gave some laxatives to the guards in the previous episode, and this is going to be a theme. It's going to be a little bit of a hijink in this battle scene where the guards, as the battle goes on, are going to be a bit stressed between protecting the Flame Keeper Kiro and protecting the temple while also trying desperately not to poop their pants. So that's the thing that's happening. But basically, this is the battle against Kiro and the protectors of the Dawnfather's temple. Quite a bit happens here. I'll go and say that Elder Abadina is a total BA. She is going to immediately summon a Earth Golem or Earth Guardian that is very much Hulk-like in the sense of just starts smashing things and breaking things. And Abadina herself is a pretty impressive warrior. She's going to be casting Blight. In fact, she casts it on the Judicator that's present in the cathedral. She's going to cast it on Kiro as well. And really is a powerful force in this combat. Some other things that are going to happen. Denise is really going to be our frontliner, and she's going to have a bit of a tough time. The Judicator is going to do not one, not two, but 3 consecutive attacks on her. And Matt informs the party that when the Judicator is able to land all 3 hits, they have a special 4th ability they can do called Condemnation. And they actually cause Denise to be paralyzed until the end of her next turn. Speaking of Condemnation, Kiro is also going to cast Hold Person on Orem and I think Ashton, if that's right. And if you're not familiar with Hold Person, it's a pretty deadly spell in the sense of people who attack you, I'm pretty sure get advantage on their attacks on you. Fortunately, Laudna, I think with an Eldritch Blast, is going to knock that concentration away from Kiro so that the Hold Person spell is ultimately going to fail. But a lot's happening here. Several rounds of combat. At one point, Kiro is going to summon a Guardian of Faith, this like ethereal, I got D4 on the mind, man. This very much angelic type creature with like a sun for a face, who is Kiro's, just like how Abadina has the Earth Golem, Kiro has this Guardian of Faith. And as combat goes on, this Guardian of Faith is actually going to do some kind of like radiant fire AoE attack that like totally scorches many of like the townspeople. I think they ask like, is Chad okay? Where is Chad? Is he all right? And Matt's like, Chad wasn't there. It's okay. But ultimately what's eventually going to happen is Bordor is going to be the one to deliver the killing blow on Kiro, stabs her in the throat with his dagger, and then cups, very gross, cups her blood from her neck, vomits, and then is going to take that blood and try to give it to Prism, who needs a vial of blood from someone who's just recently died to be able to summon her demon. It's part of a big part of her plan. So the battle continues. Prism is going to eventually summon that demon, a Bargura. And also, just when it seems like, yeah, we've probably won, all we have left is this Judicator, like no problem. The ceiling of the roof of the building is going to be filled with this radiant light, and a freaking angel is going to come down, or they correct and say it's a celestial that is going to arrive and basically says, leave this temple now or you're going to be judged. So the party now is having to fight this angel who not only is, I think, 30 or 40 feet up, but is also casting fireball. And there's this cool thing where both Ladna and Prism are constantly trying to counterspell the angel, but they're like always out of line of sight. It's just like the right positioning. So the angel, or just so I don't get corrected in the comments, the Dawnborn angel, as Matt calls it, is going to be either casting that or is going to be casting the spell called Fiery Castigation. And just a very cool, high flavor kind of character. And I think from there we go to the break before we continue combat. I think they do actually finish off the Judicator before we go to break. Like I mentioned, the Judicator is going to get light casted on it. I think they take it out before the break. If not, Will, I'm sure
I
you'll.
think so.
Okay, I was gonna say, if not, you're gonna let me know if I missed anything. But anyway, we go to break, and do you want to take it from there?
Yeah, and I think they did finish off the Judicator.
Yeah. Okay.
So we pick back up with this combat after the break. Again between an angel, a demon, and a rock elemental, essentially, and of course, our party. Again, just hitting the highlights here. Ashton actually asks this rock elemental to toss him
Yeah.
up so that he can attack this flying angel. Um, and it's cool because at this point, the like command Elder Abadina had on the elemental had faded. Um, so because of Ashton's like kind of connection to the elemental and also his high roll, the elemental does still oblige and toss them up in the air. So Ashton makes two attacks, one on the way up and one on the way down. And on the way up, it's a nat 20. So Ashton has this really cool move doing a ton of damage to this angel, which is a really fun moment in the episode. Um, so again, this angel's in the air, so it's causing kind of an inconvenience for people to be able to attack it. So Orem and Denise both actually climb on top of the demon, like on its back, and the demon then leaps into the air, and actually grabs the angel and tugs them all back, toppling down to the earth. Um, Combat continues, but Bordor actually ultimately rolls up to this now prone angel and casts Inflict Wounds, basically grabbing both sides of the angel's head, and says enough. And he actually gets the "How do you want to do this?" moment, and the angel just like turns to ash and basically burns away. Now, with combat effectively over, the only two big entities left are the demon and the elemental, both of which were summoned by our team. The elemental actually goes over to the demon and basically like crushes both of them so that they're both gone, ending both summons. Um, Combat's officially over now, but Elder Abadina, still kind of empowered by these eidolons and this elemental mist, begins to destroy the temple with vines like breaking through the windows and just like crumbling this Dawnfather temple. Um, Denise rocks up and is like, "Hey, you owe us that scry now." And the elder's like, "Listen, I need some time to rest after a battle, but like we'll do it first thing tomorrow." Um, the party does, I forgot to mention, sweep through the temple as it's being destroyed one last time just to see what they can find, see what they can loot. And they do get a number of religious texts and tomes. And Ashton and Prism actually also find a large sum of money, which is the tithe that this community has been paying to the church. And they also loot Kiro's staff and blade. Basically, all this stuff is thrown into the portable hole. So they make their way out of the crumbling temple, and the people of the town are basically celebrating at the destruction of the temple, and back to their normal setup before these people kind of moved in and started taking over. And Orem is kind of just taking in the complexity of the moment,
Yeah.
having defied a god to ultimately stop a man who's trying to end the gods. It's very gray. Um, And as these moments are happening, the remaining Dawnfather guards have basically been corralled and tied up. And Elder Abadina walks up and basically says, "Y'all have two choices. You can either leave this town, and never look back, type of thing, or you can stay and try to make amends for what you've done." And all but one guard takes their leave and walks out of town. The only one that stays is a young man that obviously was like from this village, and he just falls before the elder and begs for forgiveness. And she says, in time there will be a way for you to make up for this. Ashton and Prism then discuss this money that they found and ultimately decide to tell the elder about it. And she decides to give the money to Prolef and tells him, like, distribute this as you see fit. Like, you know better than anybody what's been going on here. Um, Orem and Ladna then have a great heart to heart about their circumstances and that complexity of the moment that I was just referring to with Orem. And Ladna basically gives the same advice to Orem that Ashton had given to her, saying that, changing and fixing the world seems impossible, but we can at least save our friends. And so that's what they decide to focus on. And Orem says, I don't know how much time we have left on this planet, but I just want to make the times we do have count, and spend them with the people I care about. And he tells Laudna, I don't know how you've bounced through history and ended up here with me, but I'm really glad that you did.
Mhm.
Just a classic, great Liam Marisha moment.
Yeah.
Um, So then the elder leads the whole crew back to her house because they don't want to leave her side until she's made good on this scry deal. And she again assures them that first thing in the morning, once she's had a chance to rest, they will take care of it. So everyone's about to go to sleep, but before they do, there's a few more conversations. One of which with the elder, she explains a little bit more about the Eidolons and how they've lived in these lands for a very long, long time, and they used to live symbiotically with the people before the gods took over. And she explains this isn't just like one entity, there are innumerable Eidolons. They are the childrens of the Titans that first shaped Exandria, and they are echoes of them. Basically, the elemental royalty of this world is how she describes it. Then the party is like, well, is Predathos going to have a problem with these Eidolons just like he has with the gods? And they're not really sure. Um, Ashton and Laudna then have another heart to heart where Laudna wants to know what Ashton wants to talk to the elder about because Ashton does want to have a conversation with the elder, we find out. And she says, is it about that Hishari helmet that you have? And he says, no, but like that's something I want to talk to you guys about once things kind of calm down a little bit. But he does say that, tonight was just the worst nightmare. Tonight was the first time the gods saw Ashton. He
Mhm.
wasn't invisible. And he says, it felt awful and he's been judged by better. Um, After that, everyone's going to sleep except Orem, who leaves and goes to be by himself. And so Border goes and actually follows after him. He eventually finds him and they have a conversation where Bordor is like, hey, I've lived a very simple, small life. Like, this is all new to me. And I had to fight something tonight that I've never even fathomed before. And I felt nothing but like sadness and compassion at having to kill. So he's like, so what are we doing? And Orem says that, I'm just trying to save my friends. If there's a 1 in 2,000 chance of stopping more people from being killed, that's what I'm doing. And Border's like, well, I can get behind that. So then everyone takes and completes their long rest, except Orem, who stayed up all night. So a point of exhaustion for him. Um, excuse me. One other thing is Prism and Laudna did this night stay up reading some of those religious texts that they looted, and did find out that there was like this concerted effort to buy up more land in the region to build more temples. There's also just discussion of the solstice and a dispersal of forces at these points of interest, presumably nexus points. So morning comes and is now time to scry. The elder does make a copy of the scry spell to give to Prism so that she can copy. Um, but she then lets them know that, like, hey, I can do 3 scries, so divide amongst yourselves how we want to do that and let me know. So the first one is we are going to scry on the other half of Bell's Hells, and Orem gives the elder the box Chetney made for him as like a reference point.
Right.
So they do that first, and they get this vision of Bell's Hells in the snowy mountains, which we know to be near Uthadern, um, just traveling in the snow, accompanied by a woman that they don't recognize and an automaton that looks like FCG. But they notice that they're, at least alive and okay. And I believe it's Prism, but somebody in the group recognizes that they are near
Yeah. Uthadern.
Uthadern.
Yeah.
And they're like, how are we going to get to another continent? Um, and they ask the elder this, and she says, well, you could always go to Vasselheim. There's probably people there. But there's also this man named Hevestro, Hierophant of the Emerald Tree, an archdruid that she wants to train under. Says it's about 4 or 5 days travel from here. Like that could be a route you take as well. Next scrying spell, we have Denise, who gives up a piece of Dariax's hair. She performs the spell and sees this dwarven man, kind of tired, sweaty, looking rough, sitting down in a dark space. A blue hand then touches his shoulder, and Dorian appears, also looking a
Woo!
bit rough.
We love
Um,
you. Sorry. Go
that's
ahead.
right. Next up, finally, we have Bordor, who doesn't, he wants to scry on his brother, his sick brother, but he doesn't have any items to give to help with the scry. But he ultimately decides, well, here, use my dagger. Like maybe you can use that to look at my house. And so the vision starts, and there's this homestead. Um, and they quickly realize that it's not Bordor's home. He's like, this isn't my house. I don't know what this house is. So they're not sure if the dagger is calling a connection to something, some other place of importance that Bordor just can't make the logical connection to, or what. He's just not sure what to make of it. After that, the elder is out of scries. And so the party talks and decide their best course of action is to head toward that archdruid, Hevestro. And the elder actually offers to give them a guide and asks wind, fire, or earth. The party says wind, and so she summons a wind cougar, who then begins to lead them toward this Hevestro. And that's where the episode ends. Once again, that was episode 61 of Campaign 3. And I forgot the title. So
A crisis of faith.
there
I
we
think.
go.
Yeah.
Thank you, man. And again, if you want to see our full episode discussing all our theories and thoughts, that'll be linked down below.